So today's video is going to be a fun one. I want you to bear with me on this. I'm going to be testing the Zexio Prime. This is a very expensive luxury good item, but there's something about this driver what I want to talk about compared to other drivers in relationship to you, and it's what's in the driver. So this driver has a 35.5 gram shaft. It's also 46.25 inches long, so it's longer than, say, my Strixon ZX7. Now my Strixon ZX7 driver has a 50 gram shaft in it. I've also got a ZX5 driver with a 48-inch shaft, and then I've got my Zexio driver here that has a 47 gram counterbalance shaft. Now, I notice when I go to a lighter shaft, so in my Zexio, I definitely gain speed, but then there's some other sacrifices which we'll talk about. So let's talk today about weight of shaft, what it could mean for your golf, weight and length to a certain extent, because they kind of intertwine together. Also, I want you to post in the comments down below. Let me know what shaft weight is in your driver right now, and if you don't go out to the car, go and have a look, to the garage, whatever, pull it out and have a look. It'll say it somewhere on here, or on here, down at the bottom. It'll tell you the weight generally. Let me know in the comments down below the weight of the shaft in your driver. Lighter, longer shafts. Will companies start going this way a bit more? Watch as we find out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit a few with the Prime to start. So it's got this black head, silver face, looks as good as anything else out there. It definitely feels longer with 46.25 shaft. It feels super, super light. This is also a regular flex, and it's a 10 degree. So this driver basically just is not made for me. So a longer, lighter driver, very high priced. Who is it made for? And are there equivalents as well, maybe in other manufacturers that you're just not trying? And maybe you might need to be thinking about trying them, possibly. So let's start with a few with the Prime, and then we'll flip between them all and show you what actually happens between them. This is a regular shaft. I'm going to try and give it a good old whack and move it. So instantly my first one there I can see is fast. Not the best strike in the world. So what's interesting as well, bearing in mind the price of this club, is that because it's so light, it actually feels quite cheap. It doesn't feel like an expensive club in my hand because it feels so light, which is an interesting comparison that I draw, which obviously has no logic apart from what we're kind of preconditioned and used to. Bit of a miss hit off the toe. You can see that I'm turning a little left. Again, it's fast. And because it's longer, it doesn't feel that frightening because it does feel so light. So it's longer, which would normally feel a little bit unwieldy, which you'll see when I get to, say, 48 inch, which is obviously longer than this. But because it's so light, it does feel like I can move it still. So absolutely I am moving that quicker. I can see the number in front of me there, and I am moving it faster. It feels like I can move it faster, and that's going to be a combination of the length and the lightness. I mean, the ridiculous lightness of this club. So I'm going to hit the 48 inch now, just to try and push the idea of it being longer. And this one now feels too long and heavy. And what I find with this one is I get a bit erratic. It needs practice. And I'm actually not moving this any quicker than my standard length club because I obviously just not strong enough to move the extra weight through the length, and it brings the speed in the long run back down. Just a little bit pushy. Again, it's just, I don't get any benefit from the extra length. It goes fast enough, but I don't feel like I can pick up any extra pace with it. And again, strike varies a little bit because it's pushing me on my length. So now I've gamed this driver, the Zexio 10, and this has the 47 gram counterbalance shaft in it. And again, this one feels light. It feels like I can really go for it with this one. Like, I literally feel like I can spank this. There are sacrifices, again, which I'll show you, but again, the speed on this is jumping up. And I guess a question for you, and you'll be probably a bit surprised with the data that comes out of this, is how light a shaft have you ever tested in your fit? When I did a little Twitter poll, it was around, I mean, it's 55, 60 grams kind of ideas is where I would guess the majority of golfers have got their driver weight in the shaft. So they're around 60 gram, between 55 and 60 gram. And I've always enjoyed this, the Zexio 10 or X, like, because of the lightness. I do feel I can go at my full speed with it. So this is my gamer at the minute, ZX7, and it's a 50 gram shaft in this one, 45.25 inches long. That might be changing to 46 soon. Now, if you bear in mind average weight of shaft, say 55, 60 grams, but the average driving distance is recorded at around 220 yards. So obviously there's people watching this who are booming it long and what have you, and it maybe doesn't apply for you. I wouldn't expect you to really be going too much into light shafts, but so the ZX7 here, I'm swinging that around 112, so that's not slow, like that's quick. In amateur golf that would be fast, and in the realms of average distance that would be classed as long, and we'll show you the exact numbers soon. And then in the realms of average shaft weight, I'm down near the minority. Like, I mean, when I go into the 35 and 47 gram, I'm down, I reckon, into the like 1-2% of golfers when it comes to shaft weight. How is that possible? Like, what is going wrong here? Have I got it crazy wrong? I mean, I could do, or maybe is the golf industry getting it slightly wrong, or is it just easier to sell you what's on people's racks? Oh, it's a straight arrow. Right, prime to finish. Let's look at the numbers. Gone back around. We've got the speed going a little bit fast for me. And this club, like, there's some issues with the flight, but that is faster. Like, so much faster. So all four drivers here. Let's kick it off with dispersion. Very interesting with the dispersion, isn't it? Look at how tight they are. The green, the 48 inches furthest left to right, follows the pattern that I find on the course. It's just so hard to control the 48 inch at the moment. I feel like I could do it. I just need to be considerably stronger. So I think it's just pushing me past my comfort zone. But what's really interesting with the prime, it's the shortest of the three. So 6 yards and 7 yards. But look at the standard deviation. The standard deviation is 9. So this is running into this on carry. Now where it does almost cross for distance, so you could say this is 10 yards further, ZX7 here to 290 in the prime with a 10 yard standard deviation to an 8 yard deviation, standard deviation. So you're gonna say that the ZX7 is a shift forwards in distance coming from the spin control. You've got to remember the loft of the prime is not right for me. It's a good 2 or 3 degrees away from where I need it. But it's only just a push forward. If you haven't watched my standard, my regression to the mean video, maybe we'll put a link up in the corner and you should go away and watch it and then come back to this numbers part, because it will make you realize that maybe 10 yards here isn't actually a gain if the standard deviation is 10. Now, if I repeated this test over and over and over again and that kept coming out, you could argue it is. But you're going to find, so basically 290 means that I can get some rolling at 300, but I can quite easily get some going down at 280. This one I can get some at 308, but I can equally get them back down at 292, running into this one if it's the top end. Now here's the real interesting part. Ball speed with the prime, by far the winner. 117 club with a standard deviation of 1.1. The closest to it is the Zexio at 113. Then the ZX7 at 112, standard deviation of 0.8. So these two again are the same. They're running into each other, really top end and bottom end. But the standout speed is the prime. It's 5 mile an hour faster than the next one, or 4 mile an hour faster and 5 mile an hour faster than my Gamer. Not that it gives those distances because of launch characteristics, but this here, 5 mile an hour faster, what could that mean for you? And also again, just look at the 48 incher. It doesn't really beat any of the other twos, which is why it's not being gamed. It's just, again, it's just past my limits of my strength, I think, at the moment. 5 mile an hour faster, what could that mean for the average golfer? 5 mile an hour extra clubhead speed, if that equated to 2 mile or 3 mile an hour to someone swinging down at the average driving distance of 220, you would argue if they can strike it, that driving distance is going to maybe have a chance of increasing. You've got to remember, this is an extreme light shaft. If you're up there at 60 grams and you're averaging 220, you're in that average bracket or even below it, then you might not be really trying the right shafts. If you think about it, if the average drive is 220 yards, this is data collected from the RNA, it's not my data, it's been recorded, and we'll talk about what the averages can mean because they can be misleading as well. That means, I'm guessing, you're around an 85, 90 mile an hour clubhead speed. So that's an 85 mile an hour clubhead speed, carrying 180 and going 203. So I'm trying to hit, there you go, 88 miles an hour. This is going to be Mr. or Mrs. Average here. Boom, 207. So let's look at the clubhead speed to get the average. So 206 carry, averaging 229, 12 yard standard deviation. I mean, this is the average driver right here. This is the average male driver, and that's nearly a 90 mile an hour clubhead speed with a 3.6 standard deviation. So my question to you is, are you looking at your drivers now, before this video now to this point, and thinking, yeah, I've never tried a lighter shaft, and I've certainly not tried a 46-inch shaft, or have you? Down in that comment section down below. The more I hit this driver, the more it gets me thinking that golfers are very easily sold into the medium, into that medium bracket. And at the moment, you're probably around a 55, 60 gram shaft in a driver is the medium bracket. I'm hitting a 50 gram driver shaft and lighter sometimes. And I'm swinging up at 112s, 113s, 114s, 115s. If you're swinging at 90 miles an hour with a 60 gram shaft, are you making the best decision? Now, remember, this is purely an idea of maybe something you should test. This isn't a right or wrong. I am not saying you should all have lighter, longer shafts, not at all. Because you could be hitting the average, but with quite a lot of clubhead speed. So you could be hitting the average, but swinging quite fast. You're just not very efficient. So you fall into that average. Or you're hitting 260 drives, but then you can hit them 180, you know, and then you start averaging near that middle. So that's a 219 carry. Didn't get the club head speed because I was swinging at such a crazy angle, but that club head speed would have got up near 100 miles an hour. Now, swinging this at 100 miles an hour, this light and feeling, some of you might think, oh, I just don't like the feel of that. I don't feel like I can control a regular shaft and a light shaft. That is all cool. Like, you saw the difference. It was 5 miles an hour, but 5 mile extra clubhead speed, but unable to control the delivery is not going to help you. You could see from my numbers there, I was actually getting the best numbers for distance from the driver that swung medium to slower of the range of all those drivers that I tested. So delivery is always going to override everything. The question that you should be asking yourself, and the ones that you should be pushing the fitters for, is, have you got this in a lighter shaft? I want to see how I react with it. I've done this test with Coach Lockie, where, because Mizuno produced shafts that are in the 40 gram range, super, super light. And he actually swung it slower than his heavier shaft because he just couldn't really commit to it. He didn't like the feel of it and he couldn't let go of it. Where his heavier shaft, he could feel it, he reacted to it, he pulled on it in a different way and he got that going faster. I am definitely seeing and responding to lighter shafts, and I'm definitely seeing people having medium to heavier shafts more than lighter. I think on my Twitter poll, like I say, it was 1 or 2 or 3% had the weight of shaft that I game, and I am not in the bottom 3% of clubhead speeds on Twitter. Wow. Yeah. Who knows on Twitter, because everyone thinks they're a pro, don't they, on there? But the actual fact that I can pick up 5 miles an hour of this, even though launch isn't as good, a 116 clubhead speed, if I could get launch, if they made this in a 7, you know, other manufacturers will make an 8.5 or a 7 in a 50 gram shaft or a 45 gram shaft, whatever you, and then you hit them that pace and see what you get out of them. If delivery's there, adding clubhead speed by purely moving away from the bracket that golf wants to just bung you into might actually show you some real gains, rather than companies saying that they've increased the MOI by 5, 6, 7, 8%, which between you and me equates to next to nothing. Put comments down below, let me know what you think. Have you tried lighter shafts? Will you next time? You tried them and just hated them? And again, I get that. Like, I don't mind lighter and Zexio, I can feel it. Some people just pick it up and they hate the feel of it. Can't deliver, can't strike with it. That's cool, that's them. Players react to what they feel. You've got to go with that. But don't limit yourself to fall into that medium bracket. Let me know what you think.